It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining, flowers are in bloom, and Savor Idaho, Idaho's premier wine event, returns to the Idaho Botanical Garden in Boise on Sunday, June 8th. There you can sample the best of Idaho wines and ciders, stroll the beautiful gardens, grab a bite from local food trucks, enjoy live music, and much more. So slip on the shades, pull up a glass, and enjoy award-winning Idaho wines and ciders at Savor Idaho. Purchase your tickets today at idahowines.org. You must be 21 or over to attend. Today on CityCast Boise, we have the scoop on a behind-the-scenes memo that reveals St. Luke's is making a quiet shift to stop flying the inclusive pride flag, even as the city of Boise stands firm. And we're breaking down local election results, plus our favorite ideas for soaking up the sunny weekend. It's Friday, May 23rd. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Happy Friday, everyone. Joining me this week is our Hey Boise newsletter editor, Blake Hunter.
Hey, Lindsay. Thanks for having me.
I am really interested to jump into this first topic with you because you actually messaged me last night and asked if this is something we could talk about. And absolutely, 100%. So can you set the stage for us? Because I have so many feelings about this, but set the stage for us, Blake.
For sure. So I saw a post on social media from a St. Luke's employee that St. Luke's, the hospital system, will not be flying the inclusive pride flag this year, which is a decision that it seems like they just kind of came to recently. But the hospital system has been flying the pride flag for at least a few years now. You and I looked back, and it's been at least since 2022. And so St. Luke's hasn't publicly commented on this yet. We actually reached out to them just early this morning. We're recording this like late Thursday morning. And they didn't reach back out to us in time for this recording. But we have reached out, so hopefully we'll have some more information from them in the Hey Boise newsletter soon. But yeah, in an internal memo, essentially, on the source, which is like the St. Luke's kind of internal news website for the entire company, they had made this announcement, and yeah, we've got it. We've received the same message, the same screenshots of the message from 3 different employees between the 2 of us now. So it's pretty much confirmed.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was first announced as a senior leader memo on 5/20, and then it was on the source. But it's a public announcement, I guess, or an announcement to employees. But it didn't sound like it went out on emails. It didn't, it from the employees we talked to, it didn't seem like people were aware that this was happening. What are your thoughts on that, Blake, that it was announced sort of, but not,
Right.
It wasn't sent out in like an email. It was set on the source. And I used to be a St. Luke's employee. I was a nurse at St. Luke's. And the source is like, there'll be updates. It's where protocol is. It houses a lot of different things, but it does have updates. But a lot of times, if you don't know where you're looking or you don't know what you're looking for, you won't see things.
Right.
And so it seems like it was like an announcement, sort of.
Right. And this is just not, to me, a huge surprise. I mean, throughout this memo, St. Luke's acknowledged that like this is a contentious issue and a contentious decision. And so that's why I'm sure they didn't, blast this out to everyone. And they said, quote, "Considering this current environment and to ensure our focus remains on the many ways we support our team members and communities, we will not raise the flag." So they're still committing. They're saying that they're committing to kind of quote unquote visibly demonstrating their commitment to queer and trans Idahoans and people that they provide services to. But to me, this reminds me copy paste of in 2020 when I was working at the Arbiter at Boise State when the university decided to stop flying the pride flag. They used to have a massive pride flag on the side of the Student Union building. And then in 2020, for so many reasons, the university got into hot water and they stopped flying that. So I think it's just kind of copy paste the same exact situation. I have a lot of feelings about it too. I think that it makes sense from maybe St. Luke's perspective, but I also understand that I'm sure a lot of employees are frustrated by this decision, frustrated that maybe, they didn't hear about it in the way that they wanted to. I'm curious to learn more about that. I would love to talk to more employees about that and see how they feel about that.
It was flying the majority of the time that I was a nurse at St. Luke's. and or thereabout. They did fly it for several years, and it was always contentious. I mean,
Right.
as soon as June rolled around, there would be protesters, there would be people calling into the switchboard, and we just knew it was going to be contentious. So I want to know what's changed. What has shifted that now this feels like an action they can no longer do?
Right. So 3 things on that. Yeah, I want to bring in, like you said, what changed. So a year ago, June 6, 2024, St. Luke's, their main Instagram page, they posted, St. Luke's mission is to improve the health of all people in the communities we serve. To that end, we have a responsibility to demonstrate ways in which we can be inclusive and welcoming. And that's in their announcement of flying the pride flag. Around the same time the year before, the Idaho Family Policy Center, which a lot of Idahoans and Boiseans, I'm sure, are familiar with. They do a lot of far-right Christian lobbying in the state. Essentially put together a petition to ask St. Luke's to stop flying the pride flag. So that has been, like you said, it has been contentious. It has been an issue. I think what changed is just the broader scope of transphobia just across our society.
Yeah.
I think that, the tone, let's just acknowledge it, the tone has shifted even more. Like it's just gotten worse for trans folks. And the night that I saw this post was the same night that the U.S. House of Representatives made a move to, President Trump has this huge tax and spending bill that's moving through. And essentially one of the ways that kind of moderate House Republicans got their far-right counterparts to sign on to it was by including adult gender transition care in budget cuts to Medicaid. So there are about 152,000 Americans who use Medicaid, who are on Medicaid and use gender transition services through that. And that was cut. That, trans people are on the chopping block as a political maneuver. And we're seeing that everywhere. And we in Idaho are truly ground zero for that.
I think one thing, it's not just about children. Like the people who are always pushing this were like, no, we want children to be older and adults before. No, it is very clear the Republican position is no gender affirming care for anybody, regardless of their age.
Yeah, and about 2 years ago was the first time that a major, it was a leaked audio from a GOP policymaking meeting. I forget what organization it was from, but it was a leaked audio that said, the goal is to ban gender transition care for all people, regardless of age. And just in a span of 2 short years, that is now encoded into law. It has not passed at a federal level yet, but it passing on the House side was a major, major hurdle. I think we just got to call it like it is. It's just like transphobia is running rampant right now, and it's being encoded and enshrined into law. And so it's not surprising at all that, a company like St. Luke's would make this move. And of course, a lot of people are going to have opinions about that. I think that what's really interesting to me, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about this is, one, it's noteworthy, period, because St. Luke's is one of the biggest employers in the state. St. Luke's actually, like, in their message on the source, included a photo of St. Luke's employees walking in Pride. In Boise Pride.
I was like,
last year, last October.
It was a bad look. Honestly, this message with that picture, whoever did that,
I know. It was interesting.
That was not the right move.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to compare this to what the city of Boise just did, obviously. So the city of Boise just made the pride flag an official flag of the cities. And, historically, large organizations like St. Luke's, your Microns, Albertsons, have been some of the most vocal opposition to anti-LGBTQ discrimination at the state house, because they have employees that they're trying to vouch for. And they've been having to walk a line, especially for the last 5 years. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about how this compares to what the city just did?
I think it creates a very stark contrast, which is why I do think it's interesting. I wonder how long this has been in the works, because the contrast is stark and startling, in my opinion, that the city is taking a stand when the state specifically targeted them. The state didn't target private businesses and their ability to fly whatever flags they want. And yet in my opinion, Luke's is capitulating anyways. And so I do think that is a signal, that is a symbol. And I in their message, they talk a lot about the contention. It's become contentious. I was at St. Luke's the entire time Ammon Bundy was protesting. And that was incredibly contentious. I mean, they had to shut the hospital down. And Luke's held the line. And the abortion ban has been contentious. And Luke's has held the line. So where is that same energy now? Like truly, where is that energy now for this issue, for LGBTQ people in the state? And I do also want to note that when we're talking about this decision, I know that this is not a decision that a lot of employees across a lot of different practices and types of medicine agree with. And so when I'm saying St. Luke's, I'm not trying to call out individual doctors, nurses, practitioners that I know were not part of this decision and will have a variety of feelings about this decision. They try to head it off saying like, well, we know you're going to be disappointed. I am disappointed because your actions are disappointing.
It's a little bit frustrating to me, honestly, maybe that we're even having this conversation because I get really frustrated when we get so caught up in talking about the symbols. And I talked about this with like the city pride flag thing a few weeks ago, where as a queer Boisean, I think, you know, I do feel a little bit of comfort just like seeing that pride flag, but also I know like the people most impacted by queerphobia and transphobia are kind of going to be impacted by queerphobia and transphobia to the same degree, whether or not that flag is flying. And so I just hope for people that the pride flag is, if it's your step one, if it's your square one that you operate from, that's great. Just make sure that you go deeper, I guess is what I have to say. Because like queer and trans kids of color in the state of Idaho, one, do exist and are going to face the most, transphobia and queerphobia in the coming years that is just running rampant. So I hope that it just doesn't stop with the flag.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Okay, Blake, pivoting just a little bit, I want to talk to you about election results because it was a mixed bag. There was the good, the not so good, and there were some that I was actually really surprised about. So I guess I want to ask, like, what local election results maybe were you most surprised or delighted by?
Yeah, this is at least a little bit more cut and dry than the other stuff we've been talking about. I was definitely focused mostly on the Meridian Library District. So, two of the people running, Phil Reynolds and Mike Hahn, were part of an attempt to dissolve the library district a couple years ago. And then they turned around and tried to run to lead it, which I think is very fascinating. But they got whomped pretty hard. Hahn got 10% of the vote. Reynolds got 9.7% of the vote. Those are unofficial. And so, yeah, I think that this was another resounding victory for like the Meridian Library District leadership, and kind of saying that Meridian supports the way that the library district has been run, which is exactly how the effort to dissolve it went a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I think that it's one of those things where covering this stuff, covering like book bans and this kind of thing is so difficult because it's really hard to get a grasp before it happens. of how things are going to slide. Like there's been some surprises in some ways and some surprises that go the opposite direction. And we actually saw that in this exact election, where then on the other side of things in the Ada County or Ada Community Library, the two candidates who lean slightly more, how would you explain this, Lindsay? I don't know how to categorize them. Suzette Moore and Rachel Morehouse. How would you describe their campaign?
The Moores, there were dog whistles in their campaign, although they did have a Republican luncheon where it was reported that, I can't remember if it was Suzette or Rachel said that there would be no woke nonsense at the library if they were elected. But there were dog whistles. They said book bans weren't happening, even though the Ada County Free Library District did ban books in violation of open meeting laws and then had to reverse course after it was reported in local media. And so they were kind of playing there are no book bans, there's just following Idaho law, which is a law that endorses book bans. But that election got a lot less coverage because Phil Reynolds and Mike Hahn have been very loud and prolific in their efforts to ban books and to dissolve the library district. And Rachel and Suzette were definitely more subtle. I think there was less conversation around where each candidate stood. You know, it's a local election, so people were really struggling to get messaging out. And it's interesting because one of the candidates who was against book bans and against, removing materials from the library lost by only 55 votes. And this is the kind of heartbreaking thing where local elections, it's the tiniest of margins. It's every vote really truly counts, and you see that so much in local elections.
Yeah, and I think to what you said about the kind of the quantity, I guess, or the quality of the coverage about these is like, I think some people still don't know that the Ada Community Library system exists or that it's separate from the different city library districts. So I think that that's also part of it. I think that the Morehouse and Moore team, they technically ran separately, but they were like co-running. I think that to me, when I was researching them to write about them in the newsletter, like they just kind of had a little bit more of a footprint out there, it seemed to me. But I think that also they were very defensive. They managed to say that, libraries were good and perfect as they are, while also, kind of surreptitiously supporting a law that supports book bans, right? So they were a little bit more strategic versus, I think, Hahn and Reynolds in the Meridian Library District, I would say, maybe shot themselves in the foot a little bit by just being the same person who tried to dissolve the library district a couple years ago. So I think that it was a big win for the Meridian Library District that was just repeated from a couple years ago. And I think that was, I don't know, I think that it's really cool to see how Meridian has rallied around their library district. How do you feel about that as a Meridianite?
A lot of people dog on Meridian, and there are a lot of things to dog on Meridian
I was gonna say,
about.
You do too, by the way.
I do too. Yeah. No, I am among that group. But nothing gives me hometown pride like the way we rally around our libraries and the way we continue to rally around our libraries. And I love living in a community where we do, very publicly, very loudly, and again and again and again, we have stood up for our libraries. And so I am so proud of my community right now. This is like, it feels like we just won like a sporting, this was our Super Bowl. I'm just feeling really good about this. I'm like, yes, go Meridian for this election result. So I couldn't vote in this election, but the GBAD results were also, Sophie Sestro won with 36.67% of the vote. Jim Walker, the incumbent, won with 40% of the vote. Like, that seemed like a pretty resounding choice by the citizens of Boise. Did you get a chance to vote in that, or what are your feelings in response to that?
Yeah, I think that the GBAD is such an interesting local election. This is definitely where a rubber meets the road kind of election for this board. But it makes sense. I think that this is a smaller local election is the perfect place where incumbents can really just keep it moving. And then Sophie Sestro makes a lot of sense for this position, as she's been involved in a lot of different things, including tourist agencies and the Boise Chamber of Commerce. So I'm excited to see what she's going to bring to the table and just what that district wants to do in the next 6 years.
And just a quick shout out before we move on. Canyon County passed their ambulance levy. As someone who has worked in healthcare, I have family who works in healthcare, this was desperately needed. So good job, Canyon County. This was essential.
This, for the sporting analogies, this was like a big comeback. This, I believe, was the third time that this particular kind of levy has been put forward. It's a temporary one. It's for $7.9 million to kind of staff and re-amp up the Canyon County Ambulance District. And they got what they needed. It's going to work for 2 years. It just needed a simple majority, and it happened. So I think a lot of people in Canyon County are going to be happy about this, whether they voted for it or not, because that's the kind of service that you want when you need it.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Okay, Blake, heading into the weekend, the weather is supposed to be stunning for the Memorial Day weekend. So are you doing anything to really enjoy or soak up the good weather we're going to have?
Well, first of all, yes, personally, my pick of the week really is just parks in general. I'm going to be parked out in a park probably all 3 days of this weekend. So happy Memorial Day, everyone. But my specific kind of pick of the week, and I shouted this out in the newsletter earlier this week, is a Run for Refugees. It's a 5K, and it's being put on in collaboration between the Agency for New Americans and Pace for Peace. So Pace for Peace is a grassroots organization that was started by mostly Boise State students last fall. They did their first 5K last fall as in support for refugees from the Congo. And then they're partnering up this year with the Agency for New Americans. And I just think that it's a really cool opportunity to support refugees and support organizations that are working hard for refugees. We need reasons to gather in community and to celebrate causes that Boise cares about. We know Boiseans love our refugee populations and want to protect and defend them and advocate for them. And so this is going to be going on at 3:30. Kind of sign-ups and stuff start at 3:30. The gathering starts at 3:30 at Veterans Memorial Park on Saturday. And then the race goes after that. And signups are, I believe, like $30. Kids, I think under 5 are free, somewhere in there. The actual 5K starts at like 5:30. There's going to be speakers. There's going to be food. There's going to be like music. And it should just be like a really fun event, honestly. And so I'm excited to see Pace for Peace, first of all, get their second event under their belt and also partner with a well-known organization, Agency for New Americans. I personally am going to be buying a ticket, which you can do even if you can't go, just to support.
We've been having awful weather on the weekend, so I'm so glad that this will be gorgeous weather for them, gorgeous weather for this event. And hopefully a lot of the community shows up in support. Or if you can't make it, buys tickets in support of our refugee community.
Totally. Is yours going to be outdoors as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my pick of the week is the Boise Flea Market. And I'm so glad that it's going to be sunny and warm for this, allegedly. Forecasts are showing 83 and sunny on Sunday, May 25th. It's going to be at the BSU Stadium parking lot, like normal, like it usually is. And it's going to be going from 10 to 4. And I'm just really excited. Some of my kids have really gotten into thrifting, and So I'm really excited to see what we can find that's vintage, which to them means the stuff I wore in high school. I don't love that. I'm coping with it. But go thrifting, find some vintage finds. It's free admission. So yeah, if you were strolling in a park or on the Greenbelt and you're like, what's something else free I can do in this gorgeous weather? Head over to the Boise Flea Market. There's also going to be food trucks. It just sounds like a great way to spend a Sunday afternoon.
It's also massive. It's really fun. There are a ton of vendors selling stuff. Yeah, I got a bunch of good stuff there all throughout the summer last year. So I'm excited that it's back.
Yeah, no, there's no way you can make it all the way through. You got to be kind of judicious. I always make the mistake of initially spending a lot of time at a couple of booths. And then I'm like, oh no, it's 4 p.m. almost.
No, you just got to keep it moving. Keep it moving. Yeah.
So just pace yourself. You got to go fast.
For real.
Well, Blake, thank you so much for joining me today to break down all these issues. And thank you so much for the St. Luke Scoop.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Have a good weekend.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show is produced by Evelyn Avitia, Frankie Barnhill, Selena C.A. Reynolds, and me, Lindsay Van Allen. Blake Hunter writes our Hey Boise newsletter with help from Elizabeth Kama this week, and our music is by Up Is The Down Is The and All The Kimonos. We're off for Memorial Day, but we'll be back on Tuesday to talk about a high-stakes event in public transit. Catch you then.